Hey, what's up guys, you got Gypsy and I'm back here today with some more Mons content on the channel. It's been over a year now since I've uploaded any Mons videos, but I've had some requests lately in my comments and I had a little bit of time on my hands today. Had the urge to upload, to film a video, so I thought why not bring you guys my Season 4 run in DPL. So yep, I'm not going to spend too much time on each battle or each team that I used this season because the video will just take way too long if I do that. So we're going to run through at a fairly quick pace, but hopefully you guys do enjoy it because it was a really fun season, lots of entertainment. And yeah, we'll kick things off just quickly. Captains couldn't play this season. Captains are purely team support and drafting, so it's all on the players to put up numbers, which did add a change because up until now that had never been the case. So experimenting with a new style this season, and we'll see how it goes. Week 1 we're facing off against the Temporal Tower Titans over here, captained by Nath and Rob. So they've got a pretty strong looking team, some old names, Wombo, AM, some old DPL mainstays here, so definitely a strong squad to start things out with. So we're going to pause it and jump into week 1. And this week we're going up against Zern. And yeah, the team I'm bringing this week, we're in RS. I'm predominantly going to be playing most of my games this season in RS because not many people in DPL can play RS, so the older heads tend to play in that tier, whereas the newer, less experienced players will tend to play the more recent gens. So that's just how it rolls in most cases in DPL. But yeah, I will be playing a game here or there in another gen, so that's nice to mix it up. But we're here, we're versing Zern, and the squad I've brought today is a really fat, almost max FizzDef defensive DD to attack Zard. I've got a defensive Shuka Metagross, Arrestor, Blastoise to help with checking things like Mienshao and Garchomp, as well as Drapion. I've got a Spadef Healing Wish Shaman, a Mixdef Heal Bell Mew that can outlast Toxic Spike Spam, and a Wincon Double Dance Thunder here. So we're going to jump right into it and get cracking with week 1. So I'm going to lead Mew. I'm going to slow this right down as he leads Zapdos. So here I've got Ice Beam. I want damage off on Zapdos to firstly to scout his spread to get information, but to also weaken him for Thundy and Zard in the endgame. So instead of statusing Zapdos, I'm going to choose to go for the Ice Beam as it gives me more info turn 1. I get damage percentages which let me infer information about his set, and also just whereas Will-O-Wisp would be nice for that chip later on, it doesn't give me any info early, which is really important. So that reveals to be quite a Spadef Zapdos. It's definitely got a lot of bulk on that. It's not going to be offensive. That's confirmed based on that Volt Switch damage, so he's going to go to Drapion here. T-Spikes are really good versus this particular draft that I'm using, so I wasn't surprised to see them come. I'm going to burn the Drapion here and fire off as he sets up the T-Spike. I'm going to go hard Zard here on the knock, as this gives me a really nice opportunity now to get my Mega off and fire off an attack. So I go for Earthquake here, expecting potentially the Diancie to come in. It also nails the Drapion if he did decide to stay in there, and also hits the Starmie for pretty solid damage there. He's going to go for the Hydro and miss, and it's pretty unfortunate for him because it would have done a nice chunk to Zard here, and I'm going to be able to just Oko in there with the Dragon Claw. Wouldn't have taken me out because I was so bulky, but it would have done quite a lot of damage and probably forced my hand to heal up with the Healing Wish Shaman a little bit earlier than otherwise I would have to now. So he's going to bring in Chomp here, and I'm going to stay in, chew the Earthquake there, and hit him with the Dragon Claw, really weakening down that Garchomp, which is huge because Garchomp, another pain for my Thundy winning this endgame, and if I can get the Healing Wish on Garchomp, Charizard, sorry, potentially another roadblock weakened for my Charizard to sweep the endgame. So I'm going to go into my Metagross here, expecting him to not click EQ again, because I do have a Shaman and a Thundy in the back, and Scarf Chomp in this matchup is certainly like a possibility. He wasn't Haban, which he could have been to counter Zard, so he's more than likely a Scarfed variant. And if that is the case, he may want to double in anticipation of me switching to an EQ resist or immunity. Or alternatively, if he's not Scarfed, he may want to click Dragon Claw or Outrage here to kill the Zard, but also get damage off, nice damage off versus the Shaman or the Thundy switch in. So he's actually going to click Dragon Claw here, revealing that he isn't Scarfed, but he did indeed made that mid-ground, trying to cover Shaman and Thundy, so a very aggressive switch on my part, and did very well work out in my favour. However, I am Shooker, so even if he had opted to click EQ again, it would have I would have still been able to live that with Metagross and threaten him with a Bullet Punch. But he's going to switch out here and go into Drapion, potentially fearing the Bullet Punch from my Metagross, and I'm going to take this as an opportunity to set up rocks. Like I mentioned, I am Shooker, so I could rocks into BP if needed. But he does switch out, preserve his Garchomp, and he's just going to knock here, so I'm going to take this opportunity to take out this Drapion with Metagross's EQ into BP. So that's really nice. That's one irritating threat for Shaman out of the way. And if I manage to spin off T-Spikes, then or remove them in general, then things like Shaman and Thundy will be completely free of getting poisoned. So he's going to bring in Zapdos here as I go hard Shaman. He's going to go for Heat Wave and miss. I'm max Bidef, so it wouldn't have done half, but it would have done a solid chunk anyway and forced me to recover instead of probably leeching right there. So that's unfortunate for Zern, but he's going to roost up here. As I get off my leech, I'm just going to Seed Fur for a bit of damage, but I miss. And he's going to Volt Crit out into Munchausen. So Munchausen's a big threat versus this team, even though I do have a Mew, just because he's got those T-Spikes up. But I'm going to go into my very defensive Metagross, which takes that high jump kick very well. But at this point, I'm really sacking, because if he's Scarfed or banned Munchausen, the fact that he wasn't Scarfed Chomp leads me to believe that he's probably going to have some sort of speed control for Zard in the back, and Scarfed Munchausen a pretty decent +1 Zard check. Though with my Zard being such a defensive impish variant after Dragon Dance, like Scarfed high jump kick doesn't come anywhere close to killing Zard, so that's pretty clean. But an offensive one certainly wouldn't appreciate a Scarf Reckless high jump kick. But yeah, Metagross is going to come in here. I'm essentially sacking it off at this point because I can use this as an opportunity to set up with Thunderous, which is looking in a really solid position at this point to win the game. But he's actually going to miss the high jump kick, the second high jump kick here, and I'm going to take out Metagross with, I'm going to take out his Munchausen there with my Metagross. I clicked Ice Punch in case he wanted to switch to Zapdos, scouting for the Bullet Punch, not wanting to take any damage on Munchausen, but he does end up staying in and risking the high jump kick and misses there. But this puts me in a maybe less advantageous position than had he landed, because I could have gone right into Thundy and just started agilitying up, but that's all good. He's going to go into Zap here and fire off the Heat Wave, take out my Metagross. I'm going to go back into, I think I go into Mew here, and I might even Heal Bell. Yeah, I get my Heal Bell off as he vaults out, and now Zap's going to have to take another 25 when it comes in, so it's nicely in range of most attacks on my team. I'm going to fire off a Wisp here, as he's just going to start wearing me down with Moonblast. I thought he could potentially be Calm Mind DNC in this matchup, but he ended up being like more of a standard defensive set, and he's going to lose his Garchomp here to the Ice Beam that I catch him on the switch. In comes Zapdos, and at this point I'm just going to speed it up because the game's over at this point. I'm just going to Wisp spam. I can, if I want to speed things up, I can just revive Zard with Shaman and start Dragon Dancing up. But he's going to click Roar, which is a nice tech, so Roar in conjunction with T-Spikes and Hazards is a really nice tech to use, oftenly seen in ORAS because removal is just so bad in this gen. So I'm going to get the spin off with my Blastoise as we chew that Volt Switch, and then fire off the Skull to take out the Diancie. So I'm going to stay in. I think I stay in and Scald. Yeah, instead of trying to preserve differential, it doesn't really make a difference at all in this case, and I just throw up a Healing Wish just to show that I had it, and bring back my Zard. I'm just going to Dragon Claw here. I think he roars out. Yeah, he roars me out into Thundy, and I got a nasty plot up here, and he's going to roost up. And T-Bolt into T-Bolt is going to take out the Zapdos. So that was week 1. Pretty strong win there, opening things up. And I'm going to pause it and we're going to jump into week 2. Alright, so week 2 we're facing off against Y, who used to be called Merc. He used to go by Merc. He used to play in NPL back when I used to play back in the day. So I've actually known this guy for a long time. Took a break and came back for DPL, which is really cool because he's a really strong player. So good to see him back. Hopefully he'll come back and play in future DPL seasons. But yeah, so we're back again in RS using the same draft, and this time around I've got an offensive 3 attacks Roost Zard, and actually mixed up my Zard. I've got an interesting sub-toxic bulk up fly Thundy, which is really useful for checking things like breaking through things like toxic Gliscor, even SD. If I get in beforehand and can bulk up, I can actually beat that out. This Gliscor has no way of raising its defense with an SD set. And then I've got a Life Orb Shaman, just like offensive with coverage for his team, Earth Power, Seed Flare, and Hidden Power Fire. I've got a Fizz Def Metagross. I've got an interesting defensive but partially offensively invested Blastoise. I sort of pioneered the offensive Blastoise a lot this season in DPL, brought it to a lot of games, and on a team like this, I really like the way it can function as a defensive answer to things like SD Gliscor, even things like Victini as well, whilst also having a surprisingly decent offensive presence versus fat mons like Clef, which usually check it. It's not as present in this game, but you'll see it in future games where I bring a more offensive Blastoise. It's a solid mon. You can play around with the stat spread pretty nicely. And then lastly, I've got a mixed defensive Mew, so we're going to jump right into it. Looking at Y's team, big threats are Victini, depending on the set. Lops handled pretty well by my team, honestly. But things like Gliscor can be a pain, and Clef's broken. Clef's always crazy good, so that thing could get out of hand potentially. So you've got to keep an eye on that. But we're gonna jump right into it. He's gonna lead with Teeny as I lead with my Thundy. Now I sub here, and the main reason why I ran this set on Thundy is because Scarfed Max HP Final Gambit is a free kill versus my team. I actually have nothing that can not die to it. Even Max HP Mew will get smoked by max health Victini Final Gambit. So Scarf Final Gambit is something that I would bring if I was playing me, because it's something that people don't really account for in prep. It's a threat that I recognized early in the builder and wanted to plan around that. I even had Focus Sash Mew as well as a means of countering that turn 1, because I do kind of opt for very fat Zards, like Spit F in a lot of cases. A conventional special attacking Victini is pretty well handled by the combination of Zard, Mew, Blastoise, so wouldn't be surprised to see something like that come here. So I'm going to sub up turn 1 to Scout, and he just goes for Blue Flare there, so that shows that he's probably more likely a special attacking variant. Now I'm going to go into Mew, as that Blue Flare does a ton, and I was thinking, okay, that could be Specs. That could actually be Specs based on that damage, and that's also a pretty fine bring versus me, so I'm going to go into my Blastoise here. And that Blue Flare is going to do a shitload. That's 35% to Blastoise, and he's going to reveal the Thunder here. So he's not Specs, and he's actually Metronome, which is a really cool bring. Not an item you see run a lot, but certainly can be effective. And I'm going to fire off a Scald here as he misses the Thunder. So I was always living that Thunder there, but it actually probably would have put me in Torrent range, so my Scald would have done more damage, but it would have meant that Merc got more damage off of my Blastoise, so I was much lower, which would have been helpful for him, and he could have potentially played around that. But I actually am Aqua Jet on this Blastoise, so if I'd got that Torrent boost his Scald off, he might have actually stayed in with his Victini, so it's hard to know how that would have played out, but nonetheless, he is going to miss the Thunder there. I'm going to get the Scald off, dealing some nice damage to Victini there. Get some lefties back as he goes to Clefable on my next Scald. And that does 39% with a crit, so not bad damage versus a Clef. He's going to double here into Gliscor, which was a good play, as I'm going to go hard into my Zard and just fire off the Flare Blitz. I think he opts to get... actually, no, he U-turns here, which is a good play, maybe scouting my switch there to something like Blastoise or Thundy. And his game plan is get Victini in as much as possible with its Metronome. It can really start to cause some problems. And anyway, he's going to bring his Lop here on the U-turn. I'm just going to stay in and go for the hard Flare Blitz as he goes for high jump kick there. And we're going to double down on our Megas. So that's fine, both Megas are gone. Blastoise is going to come in here. And at this point, Blastoise is like genuinely like a threat to him offensively. Clef's weakened, it's at 61%. I've got Hidden Power Fire for the Ferrothorn, so I'm going to click Scald, and I'm going to burn the Ferret, which is really nice for me. get a burn off, so potentially weakening power whips and getting some chip off there. And I'm going to go for the hidden power fight here as he makes the switch out to Victini there. I'm going to say he expected me to go into something like Shaman, but it also did scout the hidden power fire, and that would have gotten a lot of offensive momentum there, getting Tini in again, which is his best way of winning this game. But Blastoise is going to stay in here and just get more lefties and click Scald once more as I scare out the Tini, and Tini's getting lower. Tini's now at 37%, so if I get rocks up, Tini's going to not be able to take any hit coming in, so that's really nice for me. Clef's going to probably be forced to heal up here as he does reveal Soft World, and I'm going to throw my rocks up here, and like I mentioned, rocks limiting that Victini is now my #1 priority, because that's the only true threat that Merc has on his team now that Lop's down. He's going to go for the Shadow Ball and reveal to be Life Orb, and that's something whenever you see, especially in RS, whenever you see a Clef without lefties, chances are it's, might be a stray resistance berry, but Life Orb is just so splashable, even on defensive spreads, that it's not really a surprise. And based on that damage, that definitely confirms that he's a Life Orb set. That did a lot to my max health Metagross, so I'm going to stay in and go for Meteor Mash as he goes hard into his Ferrothorn. And I'm going to take this opportunity to go out into my Shaman, get that in and start firing off Life Orb boosted attacks with rocks up. Yeah, Shaman's looking really nice in this endgame, so he's going to lose his Ferro here to Hidden Power Fire, and he's now going to bring in his Victini. Now, right here, I could stay in and go for the Earth Power, attempting to outspeed him, but I know that my Shaman is probably going to be slower than his Tini. I don't think I was max speed on this Shaman. I think I had some bulk on it as well, to help versus SD, things like SD, Gliscor. So I'm actually going to switch out to Mew, because I know that I have Aqua Jet in the back on my Blastoise. I always have a means of outspeeding this Victini, and I have a faster Thundy in the back. So I'm just going to take this opportunity to go out now into Blastoise and fire off an Aqua Jet. But he's actually going to go hard out into his Gliscor, scouting for that. And the fact that he keeps Victini alive with rocks up implies that he has Healing Wish in the back on Clef, and Healing Wish on a Life Orb set isn't something you see too often, but I like it here a lot, because once he reveals the early Life Orb Clef, that's going to force a lot of pressure on me and make me switch accordingly, so that could potentially free up an opportunity for him to get the Healing Wish off. So clever prep there. And he's going to go for the Earthquake and deal pretty pitiful damage to Blastoise. Blastoise is still pretty tanky even with some offensive investment. And Clef's going to come in here and just fire off, I think he fires off a Moonblast here, yep. That does a ton to my Shaman because I'm offensive, and he's going to throw up the Healing Wish. So getting Earth Power damage off here was important in case he decided to go into his Skuntank, not wanting to risk, I don't know, a crit from Seed Flare or something like that, but he does choose to stay in and take this opportunity to get off the Healing Wish, which was his best play there. And now he's going to bring in Victini. So now we're in an interesting spot. You saw he just went for Thunder there. So Merc's thinking, I spoke to him after the game, his thinking here was go for Thunder and try and win the game by hitting 3 Thunders versus my Blastoise, Metagross, and Thundy. But he does miss the first Thunder there. Thunder, I guess, with one Metronome boost wouldn't have actually taken out my Thundy, so I could have Toxic'd into subbed or flied there. He'd eventually be forced to either land multiple Thunders in a row versus Thundy, or switch up his move and click Psychic or click Blue Flare, all of which Blastoise was going to eat up, but he felt in that position he had to go for it there. I don't know. I don't know if I'd make the same move in his spot. I think I'd probably want to go with clicking Psychic if anything, but maybe Blue Flare, but he felt like that was his play, and he did miss the Thunder there. So Blastoise is just going to wrap this endgame up with the Scald, taking out the Skuntank eventually, and that's going to be week 2. So yeah, again, using the same RS team, good fun, but I'm going to jump. Alright, so we're back with the third game, and this time we're in Gen 8 taking on Carson. And I'm going to be using a Physical Coco, a Calm Mind Rest Lando, a Life Orb Defog, Nasty Plot Torn. I've got a Physical Fizdef, Rocky Helmet, Zong to help with things like Garchomp and Lop, and then I've got an SD Flame Charge, sort of a Wincon Zardex with a Rocky Helmet Aloe. So we're going to jump right into it. Yeah, so I lead Landos, he leads Zapdos, and a cool thing about Calm Mind is that it allows me to beat up Zapdos. I can set up on it, eventually get into a healthy enough amount with Speed F boost that I can take Hurricanes pretty easily, and I can fire off Sludge Bomb. So I've got Sludge Bomb to 1v1 Zapdos. It's the only move really in Lando's arsenal that allows it to beat Zapdos reliably. So I'm going to rest up here as he goes hard into Lopunny. And right here, I'm thinking potentially Ice Punch, potentially Encore, if he was expecting a bulkier kind of setup team. So I'm going to go hard out to Zong to scout, as he actually just goes for Fake Out there. So I'm going to take this opportunity to get my rocks as he goes hard to Incineroar. And I think I switch out here into my Lando on potential knock, as he does go for Parting Shot. And he's going to go out into his Chomp here, so can't really do much to Chomp with a -1 Lando, so I'm going to go hard out to Torn here. So Torn covered the SD, as I could threaten him with a Life Orb Icy Wind. As Zapdos just comes in and takes 35, I'm going to get a high roll here and take out Zapdos. So that's one big threat down. That's really nice for Lando. But now Slowbro is going to come in. I'm just going to remove rocks. His potential defog is gone, and obviously getting rocks off for Charizard is really important. So I'm going to get a Hurricane off now. That does 63%, so it does a ton to Slowbro as he teleports out into Incin, and Parting Shots out on my Aloe switch, bringing back in Slowbro. So Carson loves to play the Future Sight teleport game a lot with Slowbro, and that's something I can potentially abuse with Torn here. So he's gonna go for Future Sight here and teleport the following turn as I miss Hurricane, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it's Hurricane, can't expect it more. He's gonna go into Incineroar here as I just go into my Aloe as he Toxics, and I take the Future Sight. So Aloe's pretty low, which is important because it's my primary check to Lopunny and sort of Garchomp, but mainly Lop. I do have my Bronzong as well, so at this point I'm not too stressed, but I will have to play in such a way that allows me to heal up my Aloe if possible. So I'm going to hard out to Torn here as I'm anticipating a Parting Shot, just to get that regen on Aloe as he brings back in Slowbro. So here I'm going to Nasty Plot up as he goes for Future Sight. So my neutral Hurricane was doing about 63% on the last roll, so this should be doing, I don't think it'll necessarily take out Slowbro, but it'll be doing like at least like 80 to 90. As you're going to see there, it does 89%, which is really solid. So he's going to teleport out now. Slowbro is really weakened. He's under half after regen, which is important. And Lop's going to come in and force out my Torn here. I'm going to play conservatively with Torn at this point because Fake Out was very obvious there. Like Fake Out was pretty likely from Lop, just to get some chip on Torn to guarantee that it's in range of an attack the following turn. So I'm going to go into my Zong here as he makes the double into Garchomp. And this was a cool play because, like, initially it looks nice for me. It gives me a chance to get my rocks back up, but he reveals to be a trapping Garchomp, and he's actually going to trap him here. I'm going to miss Toxic, and he's going to miss Fire Blast as I get that Toxic off, which is nice. And it turns out that he's a full special Chomp because he actually, he's running Whirlpool and Fire Blast, so he could be running Earth Power in the last slot potentially, or Toxic possibly, or Draco or something like that. But he's going to take out my Bronzong there as I do get the Toxic off. So I'm going to take the opportunity to defog here, not expecting him to sack his Chomp. And even if he stayed in, Torn lived any hit, so pretty nice there. Going to get a nice 51 off with Hurricane, as I think he Toxics there, which is a little bit annoying for my Torn because I'm going to be worn down faster by the residual now, as he's now going to hit himself in Confusion, which is nice for me. I think I just throw off an Earth Power here, and I take this opportunity to get my Zard in because this is probably one of the best opportunities I'll have to get an SD up and start breaking through that Incineroar Slowbro core of his. But he's going to fire for Sludge Bomb and get the poison, which is rough. As I think I just SD. Do I SD or do I Roost? I Roost up here. Get back to a nice amount of health, and now I go for the Flame Charge, trying to set my Zard up for the SD endgame, but he's going to Parting Shot out into Slowbro here. This is going to let Slowbro get up to a pretty nice amount of health after the next regen. So I go for the SD, and he's just going to go back into Incineroar to get that -1 attack off. And now my Zard is faster than anything on his team, but I'm locked into Outrage, and he can Fake Out and kill me with the recoil with the Fake Out plus poison damage. So unfortunately, Zard's going to go down there. Probably could have played that sequence better with Zard and kind of just waited not to get so not to get so impatient with the desired sort of endgame there, but at this point in the game, I do still feel like I have outs with my Calm Mind Rest Lando and potentially my Coco. So gonna go into Aloe here and gonna go for the liquidation in case he wanted to stay in with his Lop, and gonna go hard out into my Taunt here on his future sight. I'm gonna go for the Hurricane here and unfortunately miss, which would have left Slowbro at a really low amount of health, but now he's going to be able to go back out into Lop and force out my Taunt with Fake Out and throw out Future Sight. But he's going to hit Aloe instead, take some Helmet Chip, and I'm going to take a big chunk from that Fake Out plus the Future Sight. So he's going to go for the close combat here as I go into my Lando. Intimidate not working against Scrappy in Gen 8, which is a cool buff for Scrappy. Very big in this case. And now I'm going to go hard out into my Aloe, just scouting for the Ice Punch, because at this point, like, I'm still convinced that he has Ice Punch. I think Ice Punch is an obvious bring versus a Lando team with Taunty as well. It's your best attack to hit Taunt with, and it's your best attack to hit Lando with, and you're not affected by Intimidate, so very likely bring, I think. But I'm going to go hard out to Aloe here as he makes a switch back into his Slowbro. So that kind of says to me he may not have it, which is really unusual. But I'm going to Wish Up and just pass that off into my Lando, as I think he just goes for the Teleport here. Yep, and brings in Garchomp. And he's probably going to use this opportunity to get his rocks back up, I imagine, as I'm just going to go for the Calm Mind. Start boosting up, because at this point I'm thinking I can use my Lando as a win con here, especially if he doesn't have Ice Punch on Lop, based on the way he's played it. So he's going to trap me here with Whirlpool, but I'm going to kill him off, and that's going to remove the effect of Whirlpool. In comes Lop as I go hard into Alamomola, and he shows off the Retaliate. So he's Fake Out Close Combat Retaliate, and he's going to stay in and click Retaliate once again as I go hard out. No, he's going to click Close Combat there as I go hard out into my Lando, and he clicks Close Combat again. So yeah, at this point he just doesn't have Ice Punch based on the way he's played it. Which really shows like how much of a good position I'd been in early game if I'd stayed in with Lando versus Lop, not fearing it. But I do stand by my play. I think it made a lot of good sense to scout the Ice Punch. But yeah, in this case it just doesn't seem like he has it. So I'm going to lose my Aloe there, and that's going to put me in a tricky position, because now both of my Lopunny checks, my Aloe and my Bronzong, are out of commission, and this Lop, it's not going to be getting -1 attack drops from Intimidate. Coco at full health will be definitely able to take it on, but if Future Sight or Retaliate are in play, then things get a little bit trickier. So he's going to go out to his Roselia here as I just go for the Brave Bird, and I'm going to go for the Wild Charge, anticipating him to go into Slowbro, scouting for the potential Scarf Coco based on the way I've been leaving in the back, and that works out in my favor nicely there, so we catch him on that as he switches to Slowbro. Right here I'm going to Roost Up, anticipating him to sack off the Roselia, because at this point it was useless and he could get some regen back with Slowbro. So that works out, and we're playing this Coco really nicely. He's going to come in, and I'm going to leave that exchange with 93% health. But at this point, like, Lop can click Retaliate, and that's going to do a lot of damage. So I've got to choose a sack. I sack off my Lando here, and Lop's just going to go for the Retaliate. So here, I've got to try and play my sacks. Like, if I have any chance of winning in this endgame, it's through Taunt, either clearing the field with rocks and killing Slowbro and sacking itself to Lop's Retaliate, or it's because really that's the only way that my Coco will be able to take a hit from Lop, is with rocks off, or with Lopunny having used its Retaliate at full damage before Coco comes in. So he's going to go hard out into Slowbro as I go for the Hurricane and miss, which is really unfortunate. So had I hit that Hurricane, I could have just Icy Winded the following turn and killed Slowbro. Lop would have been forced to use Retaliate on my Taunt to kill it, and then Coco would have won with Wild Charge, because it would have taken a Retaliate or any attack from Lop at that point. But unfortunately I miss, so right here I'm going to go for the Defog, wanting to remove those hazards for my Coco to have the best chance at 1v1ing Lop. He's just going to slack off here, and he really can just sort of slack off into infinity while I lose health to Toxic and Life Orb. So I'm going to switch out hard into Tapu Koko here as he decides to go for the future side there. And I'm just going to fire for Toxic, and he's going to go into Lop now. So I'm going to go back into Torn, and as he goes for the fake out, I'm going to eat a future sight. So it's looking pretty bleak for my Torn now. I'm just going to go down to Lop's Retaliate there, and Coco's going to come in, fire off 2 wild charges. I think I roost up here, like trying to play for the choke if he potentially tried to heal up or something like that, but he's just going to go for future sight, and I'm just going to wild charge him there. And this is a tricky spot for my Coco here, because he can just fake out, force me to take the future sight, and then finish me off with Retaliate there. So yeah, pretty unlucky end game there. Had we hit the Hurricane on Slowbro, I think Coco just won there on the spot, but I don't want to put it all down to that. I think I definitely could have played more optimally with my Aloe, and I mean, scouting for Whirlpool, probably not something I would have done in that situation. So I think that was just a really good bring on Carson's end, but I definitely could have played my Aloe here a bit more conservatively to stop it from taking just so much residual through the game, because really Lop couldn't do a thing against Aloe if it was left healthy. And I think I rushed my Zard sequence there a bit. So lots of things to take from that one. Frustrating the way the endgame played out, but I certainly could have played more optimally during the mid game, I want to say. And probably just honestly, like just taking the risk with Lando, and just forcing him to reveal Ice Punch with Lop. That at least would have given me information. And once Zapdos went down, Lando was sort of more freed up, so probably should have taken that into account. But that's alright, we're moving on, and I'm going to pause it here and jump into the next game. Alright, so we're back in week 4, down in Oras again, and this time facing off against Chip, who's a pretty seasoned Oras player. So I'm not sure if I've faced Chip in Oras before, but was looking forward to this one. He's definitely one of the stronger players in DPL for this tier, so always good to face strong opponents in one of my favorite gens. So yeah, back to using the Zard Thundy team, and this time around I've just got a pretty standard offensive Zard Thundy. I think I was like an agility set on this, like an agility cleaner. Metagross, I'm a Kasib Berry bulky rocker with Toxic. I can Toxic Zapdos and things like Seismitoad, which is really useful for my Wincom Mew. Then my Blastoise, I've got a pretty interesting Citrus Berry set, which is designed to 1v1 things like Seismitoad with Hidden Power Grass, to be able to take on Gren pretty reliably with Hidden Power Grass. It can take hits quite well with the spread that I have, and proccing things like Citrus Berry is useful for Nidoking, Volt switches from Zapdos, as well as things like Gardevoir. And it can serve as like a one-time check to Reckless, High Jump Kick, Mind Shower. Next up we've got Roselia here, which is the big star of the show in this match, and then we've got a Rock Polish Wincon Expert Belt Mew. So yeah, we're going to jump right into it. So I'm going to lead Roselia here as he leads Gren. Turn 1, I'm going to throw up some spikes as he goes hard onto his Zapdos. Just right here, I'm going to go for the Leech. I'm going to synth up, just to, I think, scout for the Hidden Power Flying or the Heat Wave or something like that, as I'm going to throw up some spikes on his U-turn. He's going to predict me to switch out here with my Roselia, and I'm just going to stay and go for the Giga Drain. So that gives me a lot of info, firstly on what kind of spread his Nidoking is, and secondly, putting his Nidoking closer in range to my Thundurus, which is really important. It also chips it down into guaranteed range of things like Flareblish from Zard if he was a bulkier Nido spread, and does make my endgame with Mew a bit easier. But he's going to throw up his rocks here, and I'm just going to throw up the Leech Seed. So he's probably going to want to switch out here, knowing that he can't really beat Roselia now with Leech Seed up. And he's just going to go hard out to his Zapdos again to U-turn out into Guard. I think now I throw up my Leech Seed again. Yeah, so really he doesn't have an answer to his team for Leech Seed if you look around. Nothing really wants to switch in and take it, and Roselia is just bulky enough to be able to live many hits. I mean, things like Psyshock are going to still smoke it from Mega Guard, but everything else on his team, nothing can really OHKO it. So yeah, Roselia is a threat here. I'm going to switch into Metagross as he goes for Psyshock and get almost all of it back with that Leech recovery. He's going to go into Zapdos as I throw up my rocks, and right here I'm just going to Toxic it. So this is a sequence that I anticipated going into this. Obviously Zapdos defogging, pretty likely to come versus a stacking team like mine. But the nice thing is, Metagross, I can just run Toxic and cripple this thing, which does make my Wincon Mew have a much easier time, because I am Rock Polish. I'm not like Double Down, so I'm Rock Polish, and I've got Ice Beam with Expert Belt. So if he was something like a Max Spadef Zapdos, which is possible, I think Zern ran something like that for my Thundurus. Having this thing Toxic on a timer is really big for my Wincon Mew, especially given that I don't have any recovery. I'm Rock Polish 3 attacks, so using a mon like Metagross to lure in Zapdos, defog, Hazards Away, and Toxic in the process is really nice for that. But it's going to throw off a Discharge as I get my rocks back up. Unfortunately, I do miss the first Toxic there, and he's going to get the paralysis on me there as I miss another Toxic, and he's going to defog away as I get fully parried. So this was like just a series of really, my team, you guys can't see, but my teammates are just going off in the chat. As I finally do get my rocks back up, and he's going to bring in Nidoking to get his own up. I'm just going to throw off a spin with Blastoise. I Scald here with Blastoise, as I anticipate him to, staying in with Nidoking. If he wants to stay in and damage me, I remove that from the game. And now he's going to bring in Zapdos, and he's going to U-turn. Do I spin here, or do I attack? It's been so long. Yeah, I attack. I stay in and Scald there because I want to get a status effect off on Zapdos, and I do anticipate Chip being aware of the possibility of me running something like Mirror Coat on Blastoise, which could take advantage of like a T-Bolt from Zapdos, but he's just going to go hard out to Gren, which was the right play, as his Night Slash is going to proc my Citrus Berry, and I can just chip this down with Hidden Power. And this is another mon that like my team appreciates being really low. So he's going to go out to Zapdos here on my spin, and he's low, so he's going to want to heal up. So I'm just going to stay in with Blastoise and fish for a Skull Burn, and just to chip it down, as we get a crit there, which is nice, but would have liked to burn a little bit more, as we do get a burn here, and that's really nice. So now we got the burn off. He's taking 6% each turn after lefties, and I'm just going to bring in my Roselia. So now with burn plus leech, this Zapdos is going to be a lot more pressured to roost up more, and probably isn't going to want to stay in as reliably on Roselia, meaning that I can chip down the rest of his team with Giga Drain and get my spikes up more reliably. So I'm going to throw my spikes up here as he does defog, and I think this turn I just go for the Giga Drain here. Yeah, I do, as he brings in Mind Shout, and this is big. This is really big, because now it puts him in a situation where, if he wants to click knockoff, which would be really nice for him to cripple my Roselia, then he's going to lose his Mind Shout. So he's going to go for the U-turn out here instead, and I'm just going to Giga Drain his guard. And this is just, proving why Roselia is so good for its price point in ORAS particularly. As he's going to go for the Heal Bell with guard, and he's going to switch out, potentially fearing the Bullet Punch here from my Metagross, as I just throw up my rocks. I was Cassib Berry, so I didn't really fear him going for Shadow Ball if he did have it, but Zapdos is going to come back in here and defog, and I finally get the Toxic off with Metagross, which was pretty satisfying, because we got paralyzed so many turns in a row. And he's going to go hard out to Nidoking, so I go for my rocks, but I get parried again. But his Nidoking's going to go for the Stealth Rocks of his own instead of taking me out, which I don't know how much I agree with, just because I have a spinner in the back, and he's shown that he's adamant that he wants to defog. Chances are I'm going to get another spike up with Roselia, so maybe at this point he thought, fuck it, I'm just going to go for the offensive here, but I couldn't tell you. But Flood Blitz him, kill the Nidoking, and I'm going to save my Zard here because I do have spin and I do still have 5% off the rocks. Sack off my Blastoise, and just bring out my Roselia, the monster, and just click Giga Drain once again. So Zapdos is going to come back in. I'm going to speed this up a little bit, and I'm going to Giga Drain as he just... so he's really low at this point, so he just goes to the Roost, and I think I just leech up here. Yep. So Toxic being even nicer for me than Burn here, really wearing him down. He's just going to U-turn back out, sack his Gran to my Giga Drain, and bring out Seismitoad here. So he sacrifices the Toad to knock me off, but yeah, Toad's down, so Mew's won at this point. I'm going to sack off my Charizard X and just bring out my Wincon Mew, get my Rock Polish up, as he goes for the hyper voice. We take that, rock polish up, ice beam. We got dazzling gleam for the mind shout here, because that also covered Grin, and yeah, Zapdos is just going to drop to the expert belt ice beam. So that was a pretty fun game. One of those games where like the game plan just works out to a T. The sort of approach you have going into the match plays out really well. So yeah, definitely a satisfying one, but I'm going to stop it here and jump into the next. Alright, so we're on to the next week, and this time we're facing off against GCS in RS again. I'm using a different draft in RS this week. I think it was our RS3, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so we're using a Mega Diancie team. So we got Taunty, Tang, Garbodor, Chomp, and Slowbro. So facing off against a very similar Sand team to the one that I pioneered back in Season 2 of DPL, with Sand and Sand Fighting type and Strong Psychic, with Quillfish. It's a really fun archetype, and one that I really enjoy using in DPL, and it's good to see it get adapted and changed over the course of the different seasons. But yeah, so this time we're rolling with a Protect bulky Diancie. This is going to help me take on things like Scarfed Munchout, as well as Mega Altaria. If Sand's up, then I can check Special Altaria really nicely with the Spit F boost that I get from Sand with my Diancie. And Diancie itself is just a really nice, I got plenty of offense on this spread, and it's just a really nice win con if you look at this team. Then I've got E-Belt, physically offensive Tornadus. So the idea behind this is that superpower with E-Belt smokes Tyranitar, any non-Chople kind of variant. I'm pretty useless against Mega Altaria, but the upside here is that I can check things like Calm Mind or Double Dance Reuniclus, which is a big threat to this team in particular because it lacks the Dark type, so it's such a free bring here. So I wanted to have numerous forms of counterplay to that because, yeah, well played Reuni could be really difficult for this team to get past. So yeah, the concept with Taunt plus E-Bolt knockoff and U-turn, I can pivot around, deal some really big damage with max attack, E-Belt knockoff, and prevent it from recovering with Taunt. Next up we have kind of like a mixed Def Tang with Worry Seed and Toxic. So along with my Slowbro, which is Skill Swap Toxic, the idea is to take advantage of the fact that Reuni is probably going to be the switch into, especially if it's like a Magic Guard set, is probably going to be what switches into Tangela and Slowbro in the early game. Nothing else really appreciates taking a Scald. I guess Altaria could take it if it's a special variant, but predominantly Reuni is going to be the pivot. And throwing a Toxic off on that early, getting it Toxic is key for a later game situation where it might have been in for 5 to 10 turns, getting Calm Minds, Acid Armors up, recovering. I can throw off a Worry Seed, or in Slowbro's case a Skill Swap, and force it to take a huge amount of Toxic recall, potentially killing it at the end of the turn. So like I said, just numerous ways of checking Reuniclus. Skill Swap and Worry Seed also allow me to actually neuter Altaria, so yeah, it's pretty wild. Tangela can actually check Altaria with Worry Seed, and obviously Slowbro can with Skill Swap, making Hyper Voice just do nothing, and return Dragon Dance sets can't beat Slowbro reliably. With Toxic, actually, it outstalls Heal Bell variants just with Toxic's high PP. So yeah, pretty cool techs I thought this week here. Then I've got a physically defensive Sugarberry Garbodor to help check Munchout, the monster, as well as his Sand. So yeah, that's really useful. Also soaking up potential T-spikes from Quillfish and just throwing up my own spikes, which are really nice here. Then I've got I think might be a Yachi Chomp from memory, to let me stay in versus T-Tar and get up rocks if I need to. And like I mentioned, yeah, especially defensive Slowbro in the back, which can also function as a pretty decent Mineshaft check, if anything, but predominantly here to check Altaria and Reuniclus. So we're going to jump right into it. He's going to lead Quillfish, so I'll lead with my Garchomp here, so not a great lead for GCS, because yeah, obviously fearing an Earthquake, but I'm just going to throw my rocks up here as he switches hideout into Altaria, and I'm just going to go hard Garbodor as he makes the nice switch out into his Excadrill here, but I'm Shooker, so I'm going to stay in and weaken down this Excadrill because it is a threat. Anytime you're facing sand, like being able to like catch their main offensive weapon, like this on a turn is pretty useful. And I'm going to do almost half of that Drain Punch and definitely threaten it here on the switch out. So I'm going to spike up, anticipating him to want to preserve Excadrill. He probably inferred from the fact that I stayed in and that I'm at full health that I am Shooker. So going to go for the spike there as he brings in his Cool Fish. I'm just going to go back out into my Chomp and click Rocks here as he goes for a second spike. And he's going to drop to my Garchomp's crit there. Crit EQ, I don't really think that mattered at all. I think Cool Fish was definitely dropping there to EQ. He didn't say anything in the chat, so I assume it didn't. And yeah, Altera's going to go for the Hyper Voice as I bring in Garbodor to soak that up. And I think I just go for the Gunk Shot here and get a pretty sizable amount of damage off on the Reuniclus. Unfortunately, I get a regular poison, which means that like my approach of beating this Reuniclus down with Toxic and potentially Skill Swap or Worry Seed is out the door. So I've got to switch strategies here. I've got to shift and really just abuse my Taunt, abuse the max attack E-Belt set that I have. So I'm going to Taunt up here, and as he goes for the Acid Armor, so he does show that he is that, more than likely that Double Dance set, which completely fair enough why you'd bring it. So I'm going to get the Taunt off, and at this point, after I Taunt, I think he attempts the Carmine. Yeah, he tries to use Carmine, so he's Double Dance for sure, and there's not really much he can do. He can attack me with Psychic, but I can easily take those. So I'm just going to go for the knockoff into the knockoff, or the knockoff into a U-turn and take him out, but unfortunately I do get a crit here, and that's just going to go Oko GCS. So had I not got the crit, I think he probably would have switched out. He would have had Reuni at maybe like, I want to say like, so after I taunted, yeah, he's at 77%. So he's at 83% after lefty. So knockoff probably would have done like 30 to 40%, given that he's at +2. I didn't look at the calc, I'm not sure, but Gunk Shot did a nice chunk to him initially, so he probably would have done like 40-ish, and then he would have lost his lefty, so he would have been around 40-ish. And if he'd chosen to preserve his Reuni, it would have been under half. So not really sure how it would have changed the end game, but he probably kept it around because I think he could have healed it up on something like my Tang or my Slowbro there. So unfortunate for him, he is going to get crit here, but the fact that he was Double Dance meant that like I could just taunt him continuously with Taunt and eventually put him in range of either EQ or Moonblast from Diancie. But he's going to bring in Altera here, and I'm just going to throw up the Taunt, considering that I am at a high enough amount of health that I can risk taking a Hyper Voice if needed, as he does try and roost up there. And I'm going to go switch into Garbodor on the U-turn, and I'm going to Drain Punch on the switch as I anticipate him to want to preserve his Altera. So he does actually sack off the Drill there, and this turn, instead of attacking, because I'm not invested in attack, I'm not 100% sure if this is going to kill the Tyranitar, and if this is a Rock Polish weakness policy set, I could be in a tricky spot if I let this thing boost up. So I'm just going to stay in and clear Smog. It's not going to do any damage to T-Tar, but it would negate him from getting a Rock Polish boost if he went first, and he's just going to go for the Dark Pulse, so he just kills me off there. And now I'm going to bring in Taunt and click Superpower, because at that range of health, like, he was always dying. It might have even killed him through, I think it even killed him through Chopple, which is why I went into Taunt, just with E-Belt there. So gonna switch, gonna go for the U-turn, I think, out into, where do I go, Diancie, because I know he's special, and I've got the Sand up, so pretty sweet there. I'm just gonna Protect as he goes for the Roost, and now I can just Moonblast, take out the Altaria. And the last one is Manchar, and I do have Protect and pretty much a full team here, so gonna Protect up. No, I don't even Protect, I just go for the raw Moonblast. I think I might have done that because I didn't want to risk any sub-Salic shenanigans, and at this point when you got that sort of lead, you don't need to make those unnecessary plays. So yep, that was a nice, pretty convincing win there versus GCS in RS. Gonna pause and jump into the next. What's up guys, you got Gypsy and I'm back today with the next segment of this video. I've taken about a year-long hiatus since I recorded the last part of this DPL Season 4 run, so I'm gonna try and smash this out. Get it out for you guys as quick as possible. But yeah, we're here, so we're versus Josh. Josh the Turtle Week. He goes by Ace Trainer Josh now. And at this point, I think it's Season 4, Week 5 of DPL. So just a quick run down the team. I've got a mixed def, Stunfisk, obligatory. He's got a Thundy, he's got a lot. I've got Scarf, Thundy. I think I was like a mixed def, mainly Spidef Mew. I've got a fast sub-wisp Zard with Flare Blitz, really just murks his whole team. Then I've got an Assault Vest, a Weakness Policy Metagross, and a Fizdef Rocky Helmet Shaman. So we're going to jump into it. This is a pretty calculated build, I suppose, for a Kyurem team that isn't like a sub-fatter version. A more like all-out offensive Kyurem is designed to be checked by my Mew. My Mew can also work as a lob check, but this team as a whole is quite vulnerable to sub Kyurem, as you're going to see. So we're going to jump into it. Josh is a really solid RS player as well, so this should be a fun one. But we're going to jump into it pretty quickly. So I'm going to sub up with Zard on his Toxic, perfect, throw off the Wisp so he can't break myself with Foul Play. You love it when a set like this comes together, but now I'm just going to fire for Flare Blitz, weakening Mandibuzz nicely. The aim being for Metagross to have a nicer time later on when it has its Weakness Policy activated. So he's going to throw out the T-Spikes, which is really free versus my team if I don't, because I don't have Blastoise, but I think I do have Defog on Mew. So yeah, so he's gonna break my sub. I think I'm just going to take him out here with a Blitz after I wrist up. And yeah, so Tentacruel down. Tentacruel, another mon that Metagross doesn't really like because it can risk the Skull Burn on. So yeah, removing Metagross, and Metabuzz is pretty nice for a potential Wincon meta. So he's going to now bring in Kyurem. I'm just going to stay in and go for the Flare Blitz just in case he wanted to, overpredict there. And the main thing I want on this Kyurem is damage. So he's going to go for Ice Beam here with Mew. I go for Defog there. Going for Wisp would have been pretty nice in hindsight because he does turn out to be a sub variant. But at this point in the game, I was focusing on removing T-Spikes so my Stunfisk could check his Thundy and my Shaman could adequately check his Lopunny and his Sandslash. So here he's going to go for sub, and I'm going to start speeding this up because this goes on for quite a while. Essentially, my only way of breaking Kyurem's sub is with 2 Seismic Tosses. So this is not looking great for Mew in an attempt to break down Kyurem. He's just going to essentially be able to sub-storm it for a bit. So I end up switching out into my Metagross, proccing my Weakness Policy on his Earth Power. As here I'm going to 2AK the Mandibuzz with Bullet Punch. Now he's going to go to Lop here. Instead of preserving Metagross and going to my defensive Shaman, I decide to sack it off and just get the chip on Lopunny, because at this point I'm confident that I can probably threaten Kyurem with my Scarf Thundy's Flash Cannon. That should be adequate. But again, it would be nice to have BP in the back, but at this point I decide to stay in and get the Bullet Punch damage, hopefully putting Lopunny in range of Thundy's Scarf T-Bolt. Or even like Psychic. I think it was also Scarf Psychic on this set, I'm not sure. But I end up getting a crit, and that brings him down nice and low, so he's going to be in range of a couple of rounds of Rocky Helmet Chip. So I just stay in and go for the Gleam, not wanting his Kyurem to come in super safe, but this Gleam is going to bounce off Kyurem. It only does 35, so that is one bulky Kyurem. And again, here I probably should have gone for the Toxic if I had it. I don't remember, but or at least the Leech or something like that. But Kyurem is, at that point I was fearing sub, which is why I clicked Gleam. But he's now going to sub up, and this is where it gets a bit tedious between the Mew and the Kyurem. So I'm just going to speed through these turns. Eventually he subs up on my Mew as I Seismic Toss, so I weaken his sub. His sub only has like 1 health left, presumably, or something like that. So I'm going to go into my Thundy and Volt here, anticipating him to Ice Beam my Thundy. As he does, he makes that play, so I've just skipped a turn there. So bring in Thundy, he's going to Ice Beam my Shaman, as I bring it in to take the Ice Beam. And now Kyurem is vulnerable, he doesn't have a sub up, so I'm going to bring in Thundy and Flash Cannon, take out the Kyurem, so that's the biggest threat gone. But in comes Sand Slash, and he's going to throw up the rocks, and I'm going to 3 KO him with Flash Cannon. He's going to Rock Tomb there, but because I am Scarf, I still will be able to outspeed his Sand Slash. And in is going to come his Thunderous, and now my Thundy's locked into Flash Cannon. I've obviously got to switch. This Thundy could be Nasty Plot, could be Agility, could be Bulk Up, could be anything. And he's going to throw off the Bulk Up there, so this is definitely a threatening Thundy, especially if it's like really Spadef. So I'm going to have to throw out Foul Plays with my Stunfisk. He's going to knock, does just under 50, and my Foul Play is looking like a 3-hit KO, so at this point he's going to reveal the Chester Berry. And he's going to fail to take me out here as Big Fisk gets the final Foul Play off, and my own Thundy is going to come in here and get the T-Bolt KO. So that was a pretty wild game. My build definitely was very vulnerable to sub Kyurem, as you saw. I didn't have really enough ways of checking that particular variant of Kyurem. I was more focused on the breaking variant of Kyurem, so that was which, you know, was definitely a possible bring from Josh there. So that was a great bring on his part. I think sub definitely capitalized on a more like a fatter bring from me, as you saw there, so big respect for that. But yeah, Scarf Thundy really clutching it out there, and that is going to be week 5. We're going to jump into the next one. Next game, I think I said in the last recording that was week 5. That was actually week 6, so this is week 7, and this time we're back in Oris again. We're up against Phil, crazy dude, and also a very, very good ORS player. Yeah, definitely I'd put him in the top 10 DPL ORS players. I think he's got a good grasp on the meta, and he's got a really creative building style, so I was looking forward to this one. And yeah, so the team I brought this week is a pretty fun one. So it's a lead red card Quillfish. The attempt here is to get up a Spike or T-Wave a threat immediately. We've got a Taunt 3 attack Scalade, a Shukaberry, Agility Metagross, which is a potential really good win con in this game. I've got a Life Orb Torn, an AV Ultra Fat Kyurem, which is the Zard Y, Premier Zard Y answer, as well as being a Latios check with Draco Meteor. It bounces off my spread, funnily enough. And I've got a Fizdef, I think I'm like Citrus or Lum or some shit on my, or maybe I'm Yachi or something, I think on Taunt. So a bulky Taunt checks X, like functions well versus Titar, etc. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to lead off with my my Quillfish here, as he leads off with Titar. I'm going to throw up a Spike as he goes for the T-Bolt, gets the Para. Unfortunate, he's going to get phased out into Laddie, which is probably the worst, literally the worst like pick that he could be phased out into, so unfortunate there. But I'm going to I'm going to stay in here actually and go for the T-Wave. So he gets me with a sub. Probably should have boomed there in retrospect, but he's going to go for the Shadow Ball, and I'm going to now bring in Taunt. I'm going to U-turn out. He's shown sub lefties Shadow Ball, so this is he's not mono Shadow Ball, and if he is, well, he's going to get absolutely murked by my Kyurem Black. But I'm going to U-turn out as he's going to go for another Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball versus Taunt implies that he may not have Ice Beam, which would be more favorable there. So yeah, not really sure on what this Laddie set is at this point. He's going to get the Spadef drop as I just throw up my rocks. And now I'm going to go back out into Taunt as he recovers. So he's sub Shadow Ball recover. Really interesting set. And he's now going to go for the Calm Mind. So it looks like he is mono Shadow Ball. So this is really nice. I'm going to go into my Kyurem, and I'm going to be able to abuse this Laddie because he's now +1. He's going to recover up as I Dragon Claw here. Now I don't anticipate him staying in here, but he does stay in and go for the Shadow Ball. Does 13% as I go for Iron Head, predicting him to go into his Granbull there. So he now goes into Exca on my Dragon Claw and takes a nice 31. So that's some good shit. As I'm going to bring in Taunt on his Rapid Spin and throw my rocks back up. No, actually, I'll go for the Rock Tomb there. My bad. Maybe I went for Rock Tomb anticipating a potential Zard Y mid-ground. I'm trying to catch the EQ or rocks set up there, but he's going to go into his Tar there as he goes for Rock Polish as I set up my rocks. Now here, he's going to Ice Punch as I do throughout a Leech Seed. I don't EQ there because I'm anticipating a potential Weakness Policy bring on his T-Tar, and I'd rather get the Leech off there. And now I'm going to go into Glade. I'm going to make some questionable switches here versus this Tar. At this point, I don't know his item. I don't know if he's potentially Soft Sand. and I want to kind of, I believe my thought process at the time was wanting to gauge how many turns of sand he has and set up Metagross in a position where it could get a rock polish up. I don't want this T-Dart to have boosted attack. I know my Metagross can easily take a neutral attack crunch and proceed to rock polish up. So at this point I'm going to switch around. My Gallade isn't that useful given that Granbull's at full, so I'm going to sack off my Taunt there to crunch. And now I'm going to bring up my Gallade and make a switch into Kyurem on the crunch and take nothing from that as he doesn't get him low. And I think I sack off Gallade here. Yeah, so I made some pretty unusual switches. I don't really fully remember what was going on through my head at the time, but I do remember that at this point I can bluff that I'm weakness policy. Yeah, that's right. I was trying to bluff that I was weakness policy because I'm known for bringing weakness policy gross, and he wants to keep his T-Tar around because if he can set up Sand again, he can have something that in Sandrush Exca that can outspeed my Metagross and potentially knock me out with an EQ. So I'm going to rock polish up here as he's going to bring in Tenta and goes for the spin on my EQ. I'm not too threatened by this Tenta here. If he chooses to Skull, then he won't be able to spin, which means Exca won't be able to get the Sand because T-Tar will die to the Rocks chip there. So he does choose to spin there, which means that he will be able to revive the Sand here with T-Tar. I'm going to take out Tar here, and he is going to bring in his Exca and attempt to take me out with the EQ, but I am Shooker in this case, and I take out the Shooker. Exca himself wasn't enough to save him there. I'm going to mash here on Laddie as I get the attack raise. He's just going to spam recover, so eventually I'm going to get raises. But unfortunately I miss mash here as he goes for the Shadow Ball and doesn't take me out. So I am able to take him out here with the follow-up mash. So that Laddie gone, that's really big for Torn particularly, because Torn is a big menace versus the rest of his team. So here, yeah, I'm going to take him out. He's going to bring in Granbull and die to the mash, but he actually reveals to be Helmet. So that takes out my Metagross. Metagross would have just won on the spot there. At that point, I had rock coverage for the Zard as well, but he's going to bring in Zard, and right here, I'm going to go for the Smackdown with my Life Orb Torn, and he's going to go for the Flamethrower there. Doesn't actually take me out, and this is a really interesting turn. This was probably the biggest turn of the game. So with Torn, if I U-turn there or go for Smackdown and he makes the hard switch into Tentacruel, then he can win the game, potentially win the game, because he'll be able to, Tentacruel will probably die to Torn's Smackdown. I'll go back here, so I'll pause it so you guys can get what I mean. He's going to go for the Flamethrower here. Yeah, so now this following turn, if I smack down into his Tentacruel, I'm going to lose my Taunt to Life Orb Recall, and Zard can potentially take out Kyurem at 38% there. So I'm going to make the hard switch into Kyurem as he goes hard into Tentacruel, and this guarantees me a kill either way. So now that Tentacruel's down, Torn not only gets regen, but will be out of range of one Life Orb Recall hit, and that's all I need really. I only need one attack to kill Zard, as long as he's not at full. So all I need to do is stay with Kyurem here and click Dragon Claw and keep Zard low, but he just dies there to the crit. So that was the game. So yeah, pretty fun one versus Phil. I'm going to pause and get into the next. Back here with the next one, and this is actually the semi-finals game of this season. So we're facing off against the Temporal Tower Titans, the team we faced in week 1, and this time I'm facing off against Pichu Bros in Oras. He's another solid Oras player in DPL. He's done pretty well across the seasons, if my memory is correct. But yeah, we're here. So he's got a pretty threatening team with Tarak and Latios and Crook. Those are the 3 main offensive threats, with a pretty solid defensive backbone in Clef, Roselia, and Slowbro. So alright, so first up we got physically offensive E-Belt Thundy. Really, really nice to pivot around with U-turn on Crook and Laddie. I can throw out Nox, and I've got Iron Tail for Clef as well, and T-Bolt. I think it was T-Bolt to Discharge in the last slot for Slowbro, and that's a Mega Slowbro, by the way. So then I had I think it was an AV Metagross here to trap Laddie, and deal with Clef as well, like a Calm Mind Flamethrower Clef can be annoying. Then I've got big broken Roselia, one of the MVPs of this Oras draft, no doubt. Set Spike, does what it does, checks Clef, checks Crook, funnily enough. Tarak, it's a decent counterplay to that. Obviously threatens Slowbro as well with the Grass Stab. Then I've got Resto Chesto Slowbro Blastoise here. So Toxic Scald, Spin, Rest. Pretty nice, honestly, to be able to have the rest. This is going to be a Hazard War, as you can tell. Oras, no one brings removal, though I do have Rapid Spin on my Blastoise, but the focus in Oras is to get your hazards up. And so having Spin for the rest of my team with Blastoise and Rest is going to be pretty nice there. Then I have I think it's a Taunt, it's like a Taunt U-turn Mew on this team, and this is a dedicated lead, allowing me to beat lead hazard setters on his part, as well as U-turning out on something like Latios into my Thundy, getting a slow U-turn with Mew. And then lastly, I have a mixed defensive, but predominantly specially defensive Shaman with Seed Flare and Toxic. This is the catch-all check to Mega Slowbro, so Mega Slowbro can't beat this set 1v1 unless it has like 3 boosts up before I come in, so that's the team. Big threats, like I said, Crocodile, probably Scarf Crook, potentially, maybe even Band, and more than likely an ST Life Orb or Band Terrakion from his side, so we're going to jump into it. I'm going to lead Mew, he's going to lead Laddie, he goes for the Calm Mind turn 1 as I U-turn out, revealing to be a Rocky Helmet on that Latios, which is interesting. So he doesn't take a lot from that, but I had a good feeling that my Thundy here would be able to take him out, or at least weaken him severely with the knockoff, as I do end up getting a crit there, and I take the 16 from Helmet. So I'm not sure if he would have died without the crit or not, but my Thundy does get the crit there. Latios is taken out. Maybe if he was Draco, he would have taken me out there. If he was max defensive, I don't know if Thundy would have actually died to a hit, but it depends what his coverage was, I suppose. But Laddie goes down there, which is nice for Thundy, and he's going to bring in Tarak here. I'm going to switch out. Going to go into my Mew as he SDs up, so that was a big balls play by Pichu Bros there, risking, bluffing Scarf and risking me staying in to attack him. Anyway, this thing's a monster. He's going to take me out here with Life Orb X Scissor, and now I'm going to bring in my Thundy to threaten him out. I'm going to bluff the threat and pivot out into Clef with U-turn into Roselia here. I'm going to throw out some spikes as he sets up his rocks. He's going to para me, but I am Natural Cure, and I'm going to get my last layer of spikes up there as he brings in his own Roselia and goes to the Sludge Bomb. He's going to get the poison here. I'm going to rest up, and he is going to set a layer of hazards. Now this is going to be nice because I can spin them away, and he's going to go for Sludge Bomb, crit me here. I'm going to Seismic Toss him. I want to get this thing weak because it's nice for my Thundy in particular to get this thing weak, but it's really nice for my Shaman because this is the only mon now standing in the way of Shaman just 1v1 in the rest of his team. So if I can weaken this thing, that will be nice. He does Synth up there, and I'm going to knock off here, hoping to remove the Eviolite as he goes into Clef. I'm going to stay in an Iron Tail here, weakening the Clef severely as he just goes for the S-Toss there, hoping to maybe catch Metagross or Roselia. But Clef's out of the way now, which is really nice. Now here I'm faced with the 50-50 of swords. If this is Scarf Crook, which it probably is based on his team comp, he has nothing faster than Laddie because his Tarak is Life Orb. Good chance this is going to be Scarf. Scarf is also really, really good versus me as a cleaner. Now if I stay in and he pursuits, I live. I can threaten him with a U-turn or potentially a superpower or something like that. But if I stay in and he knocks, then he's going to get the kill. I ultimately decide to stay in with Thundies. I felt Pursuit, whilst it was a riskier play from his end, he's in the back here. He needs to make some ballsy plays in my opinion. But then again, Knock is pretty free versus my squad. I could have just sacked off the Blastoise there and then brought in something like Shaman. But I do make the 50-50 decision to stay in, and I do end up losing my Thundy to the Scarf Knock. So that's unfortunate, but it does give me valuable info, and I still have my Shaman to take care of his Slowbro, as well as BP Metagross to take care of his Terrakion if I can weaken it a bit. So I'm going to bring in my Shaman here and go for the Seed Flare as Roselia is going to come in. I'm going to switch out, no need to risk Sludge Bomb on Shaman. And I'm just going to bring in my Metagross here to trap this Roselia with Pursuit, but he just sets up another spike, so I throw out a Mash, and he's going to bring in his Slowbro here. So he's got 2 spikes, I've got 3 up. I'm going to go hard out to my Shaman, as that is the counter for this Slowbro. I'm going to fire for Seed Flare as he gets crit here by my Shaman. So that would have done obviously a shit ton to this Slowbro, even though it was a +1 SPDF, but whether or not he would have Calm Minded again or Ice Beamed, I'm not sure. Apparently he was Ice Beamed, so Ice Beam would have done a good chunk considering he was a +1. Certainly wouldn't have killed me, but it would have left me weaker to something like a Crook here at the end. But he is going to now go into Terrakion. It would have left me in close combat range for sure. So Terrakion would have been able to take out Shaman, meaning I would have just had to go into something like my Metagross, or even my Roselia and just click Giga Drain. I would have gone into Roselia, click Giga Drain, because that would have prevented me from being in range of his Crook the following turn. But we don't have to deal with that scenario, which is pretty nice for me. So he's going to take out Shaman here with Knock, and if I was just like a purely Spit F Roselia, then this Knock probably would have taken me out, but I do have a good chunk of defense, and we are going to chew that and go for the Giga and take out the Crook. So that was a really fun back and forth semi-finals. Pretty happy with that one. So we're going to pause it and jump into the following game. Alright, so here we are with the next game, and for context, this game is actually a semi-finals tiebreak. So the game I played before this versus Petrie Bros was part of the semi-finals series. Our team ended up tying with Temporal Tower Titans, and we've now gone to tiebreak. So I was one of the people playing in tiebreak. We had Techno and we had Sebi. So this was a really spicy season of DPL. Yeah, unfortunately the captains chose to sit Aki in tiebreak, which I don't agree with, but ultimately it was their decision at the end of the day. So we had Sebi start and we had Tech start. Now Tech had been all over the place in tiebreak. I think in the actual series, in the actual semi-finals series, he'd played this exact match versus Wombo and he'd lost it. So this was actually a rematch. We were coming off losing this, so I'm going into this same matchup with some information on Wombo's potential builds. Obviously he's going to mix it up, but understanding that Tech had already revealed a lot of the sets that we devised as a team in the actual semi-finals week. So I had to really get into the lab and cook up some techs for this rematch here. But yeah, so some context going into this game. Tech had disappeared, I think, during tiebreak. He apparently got food poisoning or some shit on the day he needed to play. It was just chaotic, so he was out. Sebi wasn't really prepared for his game. He just wasn't in the right headspace. He'd been killing it all season, but he just wasn't in the right headspace for this. And then of course Aki was not elected to play, not chosen to play in tiebreak, so morale was pretty weird on the team at this point. Of course, like, I'm having a tremendous season, so I want us to go all the way. I'm trying to rally the boys, but yeah, it was a strange place. It was a tough place for the captains, tough place for the players, but yeah, so tensions are high. Obviously the stakes are high. If I lose this, we're out, we're done. I think Sebi had already played and he'd lost, and I was the second to play, so I had to win this game to to force a game 3 in the tiebreak situation. Now, Wombo is one of the stronger DPL players. We fought back in season 1 of DPL, I think, it was either Gen 6 or Gen 7. I think it was Gen 7. And I think I was using some terrible draft with like Luxray as my Selly counter or something like that. Anyway, he beat me in that game. And so he was 1-0 up at me at this point. So I got a point to prove. And Wombo's known for his excellence in the Sun and Moon tier. Now, if you guys know me, I love Sun and Moon. I just don't tend to play it that much. It's probably my strongest generation, to be honest. Even though I have statistically the highest ORAS record in DPL, I do consider myself very strong in that tier. But I got big love for Gen 7, and arguably I've achieved more in Gen 7 than I did in Gen 6, but I just don't really play it that much because, like I said, most of the older heads tend to have to play ORAS in DPL because there's a bit of a lack of experience in that tier. So it's fun to be able to play Gen 7, particularly against a strong opponent such as Wombo. So I got a lot of respect for this guy as a player. He's very strong, and like I said, he's already had a win over me previously back in DPL Season 1. So this was sure to be a fun game, but I knew based off watching Tech's performance versus him in the semi-finals week, I was going to have to really mix up my approach if I wanted to get one over Wombo. I think he has some matchup advantage here with our team being incredibly weak to Z Latios, as you can see. Our answer is Excadrill and Gigalith, which aren't the best. Celesteela is also like decent. I mean, we have Rotom and Reuni, arguably two of the better counters to Selly, but it can still be a pain for sure. And Crook and Gypsy are also really solid versus us. So I decided to abuse how I felt Wombo would prep with his Latios this game. In the previous game, Tech had managed to T-wave Wombo's Latios with Rotom, and whilst Rotom was also fantastic sub Carmine bait for Lati, so I felt as though this time Wombo would get around the potential T-wave threat by running sub Carmine, like Z Draco or Z Surf or something like that versus us is really free. So I felt like that set would come. So I wanted to build a team that could lull him into that and abuse it. So I have a Gigalith here, which I have the Rotom, which is just standard Volt to proc to lure him into subbing. And then I've got Gigalith here, who has the weakness policy with the Rock Blast, and that'll allow me to easily chew a +1 Z Hydro and Z Surf, proc my weakness policy, and smoke him with the Rock Blast. I've got Toxic, Hurricane, like Hidden Power Steel, Pidgeot, pretty standard here with Heat Wave as well. Super Berry Rotom does help me check a variety of mons on his team, particularly Selly and Diancie. Then I've got a Z-Fight Spin Excadrill. The purpose of that is to hopefully lure Crook, but it does give me a strong attack to hit versus Selly if I'm in a pinch. Then I've got a mixed defensive Life Orb Reuniclus here with 3 attacks, a Recover, Flash, Thunder, and Psychic, or Energy Ball, I think. And then I have a Roselli, pretty bulky, very bulky, like Adamant, Kyurem. So we're going to jump right into it and see how it went. Turn that bleak music off. So he's going to lead Lati and I'm going to lead Rotom. And this is the exact scenario that I envisaged. For it to happen on turn 1 is pretty fantastic. And yeah, I'm going to Volt out into my Gigalith. I'm going to speed it up a bit. I'm going to set the Sand. Lati is going to just pop the Z immediately, the Hydro Vortex, and that's going to be really nice. It's going to activate my weakness policy, and I'm going to end up getting 1, 2, 3, 4 hits with Rock Blast, and I take out probably one of the biggest threats to my team there. So I think Lati's arguably like the biggest threat, and this means I can just throw up my rocks here, as he won't be able to take me out there with Scald, and yeah, going to throw him up. He's going to get the burn. Gigalith's going to go down, but Gigalith's definitely done its job at this point. So I'm going to bring in Pidgeot, throw out Toxic versus Milo, put him on a timer, which is really nice for Uni and Exca, things like that. If I can get this thing just a little bit chipped further, it'll be in range of Kyurem's Fusion Bolt. So I'm going to go into Reuni here as I go for Signal Beam, anticipating a potential Crook to come in. And right here, he's going to stay in regular and set up rocks as I just smoke him with Flash Cannons. So 2 of his biggest offensive threats are down. Feels good, as I'm going to switch out here into Pidgeot as he's just going to crunch. And yeah, I can throw off a Hurricane pretty freely now as he does stay in and go for the crunch. So I think at this point he could potentially be Super Berry on his Crocodile, which would make him a pretty good check to Excadrill. But here I'm just going to Beam with Kyurem and follow it up with a Fusion Bolt, taking out Melodic. So yeah, he's looking in a pretty commanding spot at this point. He's going to bring in Selly here and it's our Ice Beam, so I don't want a Fusion Bolt in case he's auto weakness policy. That would be pretty bad and could potentially lose me the game here. But he's just going to go for the Superpower, and there's no way a Superpower is killing a Kyurem unless that's banned from there. So I'm a pretty bulky Kyurem, so yeah, he's confirmed banned Selly, and that's a really interesting bring and nice info for me here. I can just go into Reuni and predict his Crook to come in and smoke him with Signal Beam. He's going to bring an Electrode here. I think I just recover up on the Electro Ball. Yeah, that's Life Orb Electro Ball, so that's doing a shit ton. As he's going to Volt out here and bring in Selly. I've got Thunder on this set. I think I throw off a Thunder here and miss, as he's just going to go for the Heavy Slam, but that's cool because I can switch out hard into my Rotom if I want, but I actually choose to stay in because it covered him making the aggressive switch to Electro, trying to take back some momentum, and Rotom here can just Hydro to catch the Electro coming in and then smoke the Selly the following turn with Volt. So that's going to be a tiebreak game. That was probably one of my most favorite DPL games that I've played so far. I think just given the context of the match, how my prep really came through and my play for sure, I'm really happy with on. Plus the caliber of opponent that Wombo is, that was definitely a satisfying game to win. Unfortunately, this pushed tiebreak to a third game, at which point Techno didn't show because apparently he was in emergency. I don't know if I believe that, but apparently he was. And we had, I think Greg filled in his place, and Greg ended up, putting in a valiant effort, but ultimately going down to whoever his opponent was. And that was the end of Whiscash Gang Season 4's DPL run. So pretty devastating, especially with the whole drama at the end of it with Aki and the coaches and the captains. But is what it is. I think this is statistically my most dominant DPL season so far. I went 8-1, so I was pretty stoked about that. Would have loved if we could have pushed it to a chip. I definitely think we had the team to do it, but yeah, unfortunately, just wasn't meant to be this time around. So that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed. This was a long one, but I hope you guys did enjoy the Season 4 run eventually coming to the channel, even if it took a couple of years. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll catch you next time.